Hi, I'll tell you about expressJS. expressJS is a minimalist Node.js web application framework. It has a robust set of features for web and mobile application development. What's Node.js? Before we jump into expressJS, let's take a look at what Node.js is quickly. This will help us understand why expressJS helps. Node.js is a JavaScript runtime built on Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. It uses an event-driven and non-blocking I/O model, which makes it lightweight and efficient. It also means that most of the operations are async and will be dealing with callbacks often. It has a large package ecosystem npm, so most libraries you'll need for building web apps are built by someone already. Starting a server in Node.js. Writing a simple server hello world in Node.js is pretty straightforward. Node.js API provides a built-in HTTP module which lets you create a server. The create server takes in a callback which gets two parameters, request and response. As the name suggests, request gives you information about the request and response helps us write a response in most web apps to the browser, and have a listen to port 3000. When you point your browser at localhost port 3000, you'll get an hello world. It's as simple as that. But a web has multiple endpoints or pages. So when we need more URLs, we tend to add a logic inside the callback, and that makes the code a bit ugly and makes it unmaintainable. We need an abstracted layer which lets us build web apps in a more manageable way. Routing middlewares. There's where Express comes in. Express provides an abstraction here. Instead of passing your method, you can pass the Express instance to the HTTP create server method, and Express will handle your request from there. Let's get into the code here. npm install Express will download the Express module and its dependencies into your project, so you can then require it from your code. Express uses concept of middlewares to control the flow of the request. We'll look at middlewares a bit later, but for now, app_use will add middlewares to the app's request flow. If you look at the code there, the first middleware which returned hello Tom will get executed for URL/Tom. There is a case which doesn't have a URL parameter. This will get executed for all cases other than Tom. In most web apps, you would want to differentiate between the type of request. For a typical website, you'd want to handle a get and post differently. And for a RESTful service, you'd want to support put and delete, and sometimes pre-flight heads too. Express routing supports this. So instead of using app_use, we could use app_get and app_post. So when you make a GET request to the URL, you get hello Tom, while a post will return creating Tom. ExpressJS routing mechanism doesn't stop here. We can pass parameters in the URLs and can use them in functions. So the code above will match Tom, Mary, Joe, everyone, and print hellos plus name. So we've added support for more names in the URL. Routing even supports regex matching. So I can be rude and say hello only to people whose names are exactly 3 letters long. When the app grows, you'd want to manage the routes in a modular way, and Express provides a separate, smaller router component to achieve this. In case of the example above, we are adding a subrouter for user, and any URLs that has user as the first part will be handed over to the router. In a big application, you can separate the routing logic and create controllers and bootstrap the control like above. In this above case, book would export a book router and will handle all the URLs starting with /book, while the user router will handle all the URLs starting with user. Views. How often do we see a web page in plain text? Most applications we build usually should return HTML or JSON. To keep things simple, expressJS team decided not to support any specific template engines. So how do they support 14 plus template engines? ExpressJS uses consolidate.js library to support template engines. And since consolidate.js supports about 14 plus Node.js template engines, they can be utilized in the Express application. Let's go through the snippet. Then we call application engine method, app engine method, which tells Express use handlebars template engine to parse all them HTML files. We call app set, which lets you manage Express config. Then we set view engine HTML, which is the engine we just defined and views to the absolute path of a directory which contains all the view files. Then inside our middleware we call resRender, which takes in 2 parameters, the view and the data that needs to be passed to the view, the template engine. In our case, handlebars will render the view file with the data passed. And that will render process the handlebars template and renders the output to the client. Consolidate provides support for most of the famous template engines like Jade, handlebars, Nunjucks, so you choose whatever flavor you like. Also, all the layout options and the way you manage layouts will be handled by the template engine. And apart from the views, Express also offers a bunch of response helper methods for returning a JSON or redirect header and cookies. Now about middleware. Middleware is a function that alters the flow of the request by modifying the request response variables. It gets 3 parameters: the request, the response, and next. Request will have all the request information like the URL, headers. Response parameter will let you output your response. The 3rd parameter next will execute the next middleware in the stack. AppUse will let you add middleware to the request stack. So whenever your app get a request, all the middlewares that match the request will get executed. If you look at the example, we have 3 middlewares added to the flow. The first one adds a key called name and sets its valid tone. Since it call next, the next middleware in the stack will get executed. In this case, the second middleware prints the name set by the first middleware in it ends the request. Since the request ends in the second middleware and it doesn't call next, the third middleware doesn't get called. Body parser middleware. But we don't have to write our own middlewares. There is a large number of middlewares out there which can let you accomplish most common tasks. The Express team themselves support a few essential middlewares. Since expressJS on its own cannot parse the connect of a post or a cookie, it requires a middleware. For example, the body parser. Although we have cookie parser middleware. This is a cookie parser middleware for getting the cookie information from the request header. Middlewares can also be used for authentication. For example, you can have an auth middleware which checks if an auth header is present and blocks the flow. Things to look out for in middleware. The order of the middleware matters. Middlewares must next or res end. Can have error handling middleware. Database. You can use expressJS with any of the Node.js database drivers, or you could use an ODM like Mongoose and ODM gives you some cool features like input validation, pre-save, post-save events, and a bunch of cool features. Things that we'll need to care about when handling database operation is all the database operations are asynchronous. We'll be getting into the callback sooner than we think. Try to use promise whenever possible. This makes the code maintainable. There we have tips and anti-patterns. Use promises. Don't put your DB connection inside middleware. Think before you write your own middleware. Use a process manager in production. We're dealing with an asynchronous flow in here. Using promises will help you keep the code maintainable. Thanks.